Today's project is to build a steel Dachshund. I've got various bits of scrap sitting on the bench, so let's have a look at what I'm going to use. I've got some steel tubing that I'll use for the body. Might use that for the neck, and I'll use that for the head, something like that, and I'll use these bits for legs. And then I've got a bit of reinforcing rod I'll use for the tail, and I'll use that for the willy. And I've got some 5mm steel that I'll use to cut out some little feet. So let's get started. First thing I need to do is prep the material. I need to take the paint off these little bits of steel tubing that I'll use for the legs, and I'll get the rust off this bit of reinforcing rod just with the wire wheel. Make it nice and shiny. This bit of pipe's not ideal because it's galvanised. While I've ground the galvanising off the outside, it still remains on the inside, and so it could cause me problems later down the track. Anyway, here we go. Cutting a bit of an angle. This will be the sort of the chest area for the body. Need to clean this up nicely because I'll be capping this with a bit of steel. Bit of scrap sheet steel will do to cap both ends. And so it's a simple matter of just drawing around it, cutting it out with the angle grinder. Of course, I don't even try to cut a circle with the angle grinder. I just cut it out roughly, as you can see here. But I've got one sort of smooth patch, and I'll tack that. Before I do that, I need to drill a hole in the end of one of them because this pipe is going to be completely enclosed, and so it needs to vent when I weld it. So I line up the piece sort of correctly with one of the little smooth patches on the edge, give it a couple of tacks, and with the bit tacked, I can now just clean it up completely so that it's nice and perfect for welding all the way around. I'm using my TIG welder for all of these welds, and I've got it set on about 125 amps. But I'm using the foot pedal to control exactly the amps I want for the given situation. I'm just a backyard hobby welder, but I'm good enough to be able to do projects like this. And, of course, the grinder makes everything perfect. Well, there you go, both ends of the body capped. Ready for the next step, which is going to be the legs. So I've just got the body sitting in the vise, and I'll roughly work out what the angles are that I need to cut on these pieces of pipe for the little legs. With one leg cut and in place, it's now just a simple matter of tacking it and then welding it up. With two legs in place, I realise that I've got the body way too long. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut it off and recap it. Oh well, If you've ever seen any of my other videos, you know that I've made at least one mistake on every project, and hopefully this is the only one I make on this one. Just in case you're interested, I'm using a 40 grit flap disc and a cut-off wheel for cutting the steel. So, back into it then. I've got the front legs tacked on, I've got the front of the body capped again, and so now it's a matter of finishing the welding of all those legs. Alrighty then, the body and legs done. Now it's time to give him some feet. So I'm using that thicker, heavier steel and drawing an outline for a paw. I'm going to use a plasma cutter to cut these out, and it's a lot easier to see if the outline is white. So I'm using a whiteout pen marker to just go over the outline. And of course, once I've cut this out, I'll use this as the template and cut 3 more. There we go, 1 down, 3 to go. Okay, my Dachshund's now got all these little pads all nicely welded on. So, what's the next step? Well, it's going to be the head. Well, the head shape is capped both ends now, and so now I'm putting on the jowls. The nose is next, and I've just used a little bit of tubing that I've squashed a bit and welded 2 little nuts inside for the nostrils. And of course my third hand comes in handy, again, to just hold it in place while I tack it. Ears are next, and I'm just giving them a little bit of a shape by getting a bit of a curve just by hammering them. You can see there's a bit of a curve on the ear there. For the eyes, I'm using a couple of old wheel nuts. I'll weld them together and then I'll weld them on top of the head. So finally my Dachshund can see, which could be a bit of a problem because he can now see that his body is not connected with his head. But we'll soon remedy that. What I'm doing now is giving him some Whisker Bumps. And I'm using a bit of silicon bronze. This will stand out nice and bronzy shiny against the steel. 6 little bumps on either side. I've decided to use a bit of this rectangular section for his neck. I've had this lying around as well. So I think this will do a nice neat job to connect his head to his body. Well, he's starting to look like a proper dog now. His tail's next. I've sharpened his tail a little bit with the flap disc, and now I'm just welding it in place. We definitely don't want our Dachshund to get constipated, so a nut of the appropriate size is welded on for his little sphincter hole. We're on the home stretch now. He's got his little sphincter hole, but he needs something to whistle through as well. So we need to give him a willy with a couple of nuts hanging off it. After all, the poor puppy won't be able to mark his territory if he doesn't have a willy. This is a very delicate operation, but the brave puppy doesn't even flinch when his final operation is performed. And here he is, in all his glory, with a couple of clear coats to keep him shiny. Our Dachshund is finished, and ready for my daughter to give him away as a present. Her long-term school friend is visiting from America, and so our Dachshund will be winging its way back to the United States to live. Charlene, I hope you enjoy him as much as I did building him.